So this is a nightmare. Did you ever experience a dream of being chased by a big monster or falling up from a cliff downwards? These are nightmares. Nightmares are defined as extremely dysphoric dreams that typically wake you up. Typically you wake up before you're hitting the bottom of the cliff or before the pursuer captures you. So these are nightmares, and typically when you wake up from a nightmare, it's in the second part of the night, and you can recall this nightmare story quite good. We differentiate nightmares from so-called night terrors. Night terrors are even more anxiety-provoking than nightmares, and they occur typically 1 hour after sleep onset. It means in the first part of the night, and a person can really scream really loud. And sometimes they walk around, do some sleepwalking, and if they are handled with care, please be careful with those people, they're handled with care and talked a little bit soothing to the person, and they go back to bed, they typically themselves don't remember their night terror attack. But this is another story. You should differentiate it from nightmares. These are good recallable dream stories. I say this differentiation is important because when we go to the how to cope with nightmares, you can unfortunately not use this therapy or this technique for coping with night terrors. How often do nightmares occur? Our studies show that almost everyone has, at some point of his or her life, experienced nightmares in childhood, adolescence, or young adulthood. So the question is, of course, when do you need or want to treat or decrease the frequency of your nightmares? And as general large-scale studies show, about 2 to 5% experience nightmares that in a frequency typically once a week or more often. So we call this a diagnosis called nightmare disorder. So if you have frequent nightmares, and these nightmares really distress you, you have problems to fall asleep because you are anxious to have another horrifying nightmare, or you're waking up in the night, can't go back to sleep, or think about why do I have these nightmares, and are disrupted in your daily routines. So this is a clinical diagnosis according to the World Health Organization, and then you get this diagnosis, and hopefully, but I will say something about that, hopefully, of course, if you have a diagnosis, you want to have the correct treatment. But first, before we start into the treatment section, the first thing is to think, why do people have nightmares? What are the causes for nightmares, especially for those who have frequent nightmares? And there are three topics that are relevant. The first thing is disposition. That means that some persons tend to have more nightmares than other persons. That's easy, but the disposition that's related to having nightmares was called by an American dream researcher thin boundaries. It's not that common in German, this expression, but you can think as a thin boundary person is a person which can easily go into contact with other persons, is very creative, is very sensitive. So these persons, except or on the backside or the other side of the coin of being creative, also tend to suffer more often from nightmares. And the second part is stress. I think if you are studying I think it's independent on which university you study, stress is typically on high levels. And also students reported, and we studied, of course, I'm in the field of psychology, we studied, of course, psychology students. And if they are stressed, the nightmare frequency goes up. So this is a very important to know that nightmares doesn't mean you have something bad is going on inside your mind, but it designates that you have stress. And a special kind of stress is trauma, and this also if you experience a trauma during abuse in your childhood, or even severe car accidents or something like that, can increase your nightmare frequency. These are the causes, disposition, and reasons why nightmare frequency goes up. But if you have nightmares, then there is a second or a third factor active. It's called maintenance. So if you have nightmares and think, I don't want to have these nightmares, and try to push them away, forget them as quickly as possible, this is unfortunately, it's an understandable reaction, but unfortunately it doesn't help to decrease nightmare frequency, because in psychology is if you push something away, it tends to come with more energy back. So this strategy does not work. In the next part of the studies, we looked what people who have nightmares do to cope with their nightmares. So we are not looking at the therapy or intervention, which I come in a few minutes, but what do people who have nightmares do? And the main used strategy is to tell the nightmare someone else, typically the bed partner, and it's offers some relief because you are sharing and you have a person you know quite well and say, okay, I have experienced really deep anxieties. But unfortunately, also this sharing dreams or nightmares is also not helpful in the long run. So it's nice to have an immediate relief, so you are just calming down and go back to sleep, but the telling of nightmares do not change nightmares. So the question is, what can you do? And we looked, because we know that persons with nightmares rarely seek professional help for their nightmares. So if you're really stressed out by having nightmares almost every night, even those people very rarely seeking professional help. And we looked, of course, to the reasons. Why is this the case? And there are mainly three reasons why they don't seek professional help. The first one I already mentioned. They try to avoid the topic of nightmares. We even have data showing that persons with frequent nightmares feel stigmatized. So these are the sensitive ones and the ones you cannot trust or cannot do the real hard stuff because they are already stressed out. So this is the first one. And the second one, I think that fits in the topic of the TED talks. Most people don't know that there is a very simple and effective treatment strategy. An American colleague had done a study in students and asked them, do you know about any methods to decrease your nightmare frequency? Almost none of them didn't know anything about it. So you would be different after this talk. You could say, oh, I heard something. And the third one is also very, difficult, is that the health professionals, even if they are trained in medicine or psychology or any other stuff, they also don't know about nightmare treatment strategies. So if the patients or the persons with frequent nightmares goes to a health professional, we found out that about 30% of these contacts were helpful. 70% were not helpful. Imagine you have a broken leg and go to the doctor and only in 30% you get help. Would not be very nice. So this is the basic idea that the treatment approach, which was developed in the mid-1990s by a researcher called Barry Krakow in Albuquerque, New Mexico, he found a very simple and effective strategy to cope with nightmares. And this strategy is also important because typical medication, antidepressants, anxiolytica for treating anxiety. These medications don't work with nightmares. Some of them even increase nightmare frequency. So the typical approach from the medical professions to give a pill to cure nightmares doesn't exist. So this psychological approach, we also called it cognitive therapy, is very simple, and you can use it for yourself. This method contains of 3 steps. The first step is to write down the dream or tell the dream. And in the second step, you think about something you can do differently in the dream situation while you are awake. So let's give a simple example. You are being chased by this monster, and while you are running away, the anxiety in the nightmare is typically increasing, not decreasing. So running away is not a very good coping strategy for this anxiety or panic that happens in the nightmare. So in the waking life, you think, if running away is not the best strategy, what might be better working? What would help me to decrease my anxiety in this situation? And if you think about a little bit, then you might come up, if I have 2 strong friends behind me, and then I turn around and say to the monster, what do you want from me? Something like that. But I think it's clear that you need those few guys behind you. Otherwise, the monster will say, "Oh, you little person, what do you want from me?" So you need help to confront in your imagination, in the waking life, this new strategy. So you're looking the anxiety into the face. And the third step of this strategy is the rehearsal part. So this new strategy, you write it down and read this new strategy once per day for 5 minutes over the next 2 weeks. And everything you do in your waking life affects your dreams. So when the next monster is coming up, next monster dream is coming up, you're feeling more self-assured and not willing to run away anymore, because you know running away isn't helpful. So you do something different in the dream, and so the nightmare frequency decreases. The term of the technical term for this strategy is called Imagery rehearsal therapy. Imagery, the second step, and rehearsal, the third step. And this strategy has been tested in about, I think, 12 to 15 randomized controlled trials. So where you put half of the participants treating the part of the participants, and the other half have to wait for the treatment. And then you look whether the nightmare frequency is really decreasing in the treatment group. This method works quite well. We even did a study during the COVID pandemic with telephone counseling, where we have only 30 minutes, a half an hour per participant. And from these 28 participants in these studies, almost everyone profited from the training, and most of them were able to decrease their nightmare frequency. To give an example from our clinic, I had a young woman who had a really nasty nightmare. She was sitting at her desk, and a very big spider, a really big spider, fell on her head. And then she woke up with panic. I think most of you would react the same way, I think. It's a really big one. So the question was, when she was sitting opposite of me, what can you do to cope with this situation? And the first idea she had, I call my father, who is in the next room, and say, please remove the spider. Then I asked, do you feel safe now? She said, no, not really, because there might be spider eggs or small spiders still in my hair. So she called her mother, and her mother washed her hair and her head, and after this procedure, she said, now I'm relaxed and sure that nothing bad can happen anymore. And this strategy she used at home and repeated this strategy and trained if something like a spider falls on her head, then she knows what she can do about it. Not waking up, but knows what she can do about it. So this simple 3-step procedure is really helping most of the people who suffer from nightmares. I'm just looking at the clock. So the topic is finished, so I wish you sweet dreams. And if they are not sweet, you know what to do. Thank you.